So hello everyone. Welcome to the Future Studies Editors panel. We are very glad to have you here. We have 5 editors representing their journals today. We have Ted Fuller from Futures Journal, Hughes Jouvenel from Futuribles, Fabrice Roubelat from Prospective Stratégie, and myself, Ozcan Saritas from Foresight, Alexander Sokolov from Foresight and STI Governance. So we are very glad to have you here on board with us on this Saturday morning, afternoon, or evening. This is a great opportunity to have the editors of some of the leading journals in the field, and also to interact with them. We will also have an opportunity to interact with each other too. We were just saying that we should come together more often and talk about the world, talk about the changes, the nature of future studies, and how our journals are responding to these changes, and how we generate, disseminate, and share our knowledge about foresight and future studies in general. So we have an agenda shaped around these questions. So I'd like to begin with a brief introduction of the journal editors. So I'll just give them a few minutes right now, so they will have an opportunity to introduce themselves and their journals, and maybe they will show a couple of slides about their journals to give us some figures and where they are and how they are performing. Then we will look at the changing landscape of the future studies and foresight. What is the latest research? What is going on at the moment? What are the future perspectives? And how each of these journals are responding to this change. And at the same time, this is a very unique opportunity because we have journals at this meeting from different countries, from different cultures of foresight. So there's a historical distinction between French and Anglo-Saxon foresight approaches. I'm really curious to see if this distinction still exists. And then we will also see how are we doing during the time of the pandemic, and what our future visions for the journals are, and any other topics which may arise during our discussion. So I'd like to invite, first of all, Professor Ted Fuller to introduce himself and his journal Futures. And you are muted.
After COVID, it's the most frequently used word in the English language, unmute, 2020. And so maybe in 2021 we get unmuted. So I'm Ted Fuller, and I've been editing Futures Journal for, I don't know, about 8 years now, I suppose, something like that. It feels much shorter than that. And I've been in the field for some time. Since the 1990s, I suppose, one way and another, on strategic foresight and the like. Let me say something very, very briefly about the journal. I'll share my screen. Hopefully I'll share the right screen. It is a bit of a hostage to fortune, this technology. How's that looking? This is the kind of landing page that you would get when you come onto the website, which has got the link there. Tells you something about the journal, 10 issues a year, site scores 3.9. It's a hybrid open access journal, which means if you want to do open access, you have to pay a fee, or you can stay behind the paywall. And it's a peer-reviewed academic journal. Contributions to knowledge in a broad field of future studies is the way one explains it. There's a recognized list on the editorial board. I'm sure that most of you will recognize some of those names, and indeed some are with us today. Fabrice, Mihaela, for example, are in the room now, and it's wonderful to have their support. this is what you see when you hit the website to see what the purpose of the journal is, which is therefore quite wide-ranging, obviously clearly focused on contributions to knowledge with respect to future studies and our relationships with future. And it covers all kinds of things from methods and practices. Well, perhaps I can be more specific here about what it does cover, but also note the editors do not necessarily agree with all the opinions expressed in the journal. Looking for contributions to knowledge that relate to society's relationships with its future, for example, philosophical, methodological approach to covering futures ontologies, the future of X, the future of Y. How do we understand our changing world, and how do we understand our futures in that? And then also the capacity and capabilities to look to the future and make sense of the future. Education, relationships, how we anticipate, how we construct futures, how we understand and interpret. So that's the broad categories of articles that we might accept if they make a contribution to knowledge. And the scope of the journal, I think when I came into future studies, the scope of futures work seemed to be very much about knowledge about the futures, albeit conjectural, spectral knowledge about the future. But now it's, I think there's a more take on also our relationship with futures. So as well as all the very recognizable areas in the way we kind of comprehend the future, backcasting, weak signals, images, Delphi, all of those things, we all know and love. Also, there's the question of challenging teleology, understanding emergence, being really clear about the significance of affect on how we interpret and act on the future, on aspirations, on dispositions, anticipations, and so on. So this is the broad scope of this journal, and I think the field as well. Well, I'm not going to go through big details because this is just but the range is vast. Here are some of the most downloaded articles: AI, hunter-gatherers, digital, youth, scenarios, sustainability, policy. These are all recognized themes. It also attracts social media attention. Again, hunter-gatherers, degrowth as a key theme, good Anthropocene. I saw you there, Tanya. I thought I'd better include this in the list. Future travel, digital scholarship, and various special issues that we do in the journal. There's a lot of special issues because they are ontologically oriented. Sustainability, health, climate change, colonization of other worlds, futures of society, communities, which Fabrice currently has a special issue on the future of communities. So quite a wide range of topics, but all really within this idea of a contribution to knowledge about methodological approaches, ontologies, and capabilities and capacities. Okay, I'll stop sharing there now. There's a brief overview of the journal.
Thank you, Ted. That was a great introduction to your journal, and it seems like you were well prepared for this session. It's very good. Now I'd like to invite Jouvenel to introduce himself and his journal. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, I've been in the field for, I would say, 60 years. In the field of future studies, it's about 60 years. May I say a few words about Futuribles International? That was created in 1960, so it's the 70th anniversary of that organization. And I was executive director of that organization for 40 years. This is within that organization that I launched the journal Futuribles in 1975. Now, should I clarify that Futuribles is not means not terrible futures, but rather alternative futures or possible futures. And with regard to the general debate on the future, I would try to insist on the fact that to us, there are two aspects in the prospective or foresight approach. One is to try to explore the wide range of possible futures. And this starts, in my opinion, with an important work to be done on the present situation, is to identify within the present situation what we would call the mega trends or heavy trends and those emerging trends. And we would start representing ourselves or trying to represent ourselves the present in its dynamic before exploring the range of possible future. Now, this exploration of possible futures has no vocation to predict the future, but rather to shed light on emerging or forthcoming challenges and issues so that we can move to the second aspect of foresight, which is to ask ourselves, what can we do about it? What do we want to do about it? And therefore, who are the actors and their respective vision of desirable futures? What can they do about it? And this is quite important to insist on this conception of the future. Now, the journal, more or less as Future, is a multidisciplinary, future-oriented journal, I would say. The main objective of which is to raise an awareness among its readers to these medium and long-term challenges we will have to cope with, but also raise an awareness among them regarding their responsibility in making decisions and taking action as to avoid what I would say undesirable futures and promote more desirable futures, bearing in mind that what is desirable is not exactly the same according to different opinion and different culture. I will come back later on the journal itself, but this is what I wanted to say as to introduce the debate.
That was a fantastic introduction. I really liked it, really enjoyed it. You answered actually most of our questions for today already with this introduction. I'm very glad to see that we are very much in line with our futures thinking. Now I'd like to move to the next journal. We have Fabrice Roubelat here, and he is the editor of Prospective Stratégie. So Fabrice, would you like to tell a few words on your
Thank
journal?
you. Thank you. Here is the journal, Prospective and Stratégie. Yes, Fabrice Roubelat, I'm the editor of Prospective and Stratégie. I'm the UNESCO chair in Foresight and Strategic International Intelligence. As Ted told it, I'm a board member of Futures. I am also a board member of Futures on Foresight Science and of Strategic. Prospective Stratégie was created in 2010. It's a project. We publish one issue per year. The journal is about action, about transformations, and publishes papers from different fields, from the fields of management and business administration, communication, policy studies, strategic studies, and history, to mention some of them. The relationship with history and strategic studies is of prime interest, as the journal is jointly published with the Institute for Compared Strategy, Institut Stratégie Comparée, which also publishes a journal devoted to strategic studies, Stratégique. Prospective et Stratégie is published in two versions. We maintain paperback this one, and it's also published online in Cairn platform. Maybe I can say a few words about Cairn. It's very important from as the journal is published in French, as we consider that there are many journals in English to publish papers about the future. So we will never publish papers in English. We do not consider that we have to publish papers in English, but some authors, for instance, Jamie Brassett and John O'Brien, published a paper in French. It was first in English, and they translated it to publish in French. So it's welcome to publish papers from non-French-speaking authors. Cairn platform is very important for French journals because it offers French journals the possibility to be downloaded with the subscriptions from universities. On most of French-speaking universities all over the world subscribe to Cairn. So it's a tool for the diffusion of French papers all over the world.
Thank you, Fabrice, for the introduction. So I'm glad that you are open to all other people, not only native French speakers. I think language is becoming a less barrier nowadays. But I also respect to the idea that we should really maintain our native languages too, because they are not only languages, they are histories, values, culture, and they are very rich in many ways. So I think we should have this diversity in our field too. Probably Riel will support me a lot in saying that.
We are in a,
yeah.
If I may say a few words more, we are at UNESCO today.
Absolutely.
UNESCO today, and it was important for UNESCO in the UNESCO spirit to have a diversity of languages and we have a French community of academics all over the world, and the objective of the journal is also to participate in that project.
Mm-hmm. I'll come back to that point actually to understand if the difference is only about the language or there is some also difference in terms of thinking about the future too. So we will explore that in a few minutes. I'm really curious to know about it. So I'd like to move to Alexander Sokolov. He's representing today Foresight and STI governance. Alexander, would you like to give a brief introduction?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Ozcan. I'll show you one slide. Sorry, can you see it now?
Sure. Yes, we see it.
Okay, good. So our journal is called Foresight and STI Governance. STI goes for Science, Technology, and Innovation. It's published. We started it at the High School of Economics, which is a national university in Russia. We started in 2007 in Russian, and starting from 2014, we do it both in English and in Russian. It looks like I don't know if you can see it. It looks like this. So we publish it on paper in Russian, and it's disseminated rather broadly here in Russia. The English version is published only online, although we have a few copies just for to show it how it looks like for maybe 100 copies for each issue. So actually, we publish original research articles offering new theoretical insights and practical knowledge related to such areas as strategic planning, science, technology, innovation policy, foresight, and other future studies. So our mission, as we see it, is to promote the development of analytical and foresight research in the field of science, technology, and innovation. STI policy, the implementation of national standards for research and communications, fostering the culture of future anticipation in Russia and worldwide. So our articles are usually around the following several areas. It's foresight methods and best practices, long-term social and economic priorities for strategic planning and for policy making, innovation strategy at the national, regional, sectoral, and the business level, the development of national innovation systems, the analysis of innovation life cycle from ideas to the market, and the technological trends, breakthroughs and grand challenges, technological changes and their implication for economy, policy making, society, human capital in science, technology, innovation. So our areas are rather broad, and but we focus on two key issues. One is science, technology, innovation, policy and studies in a broad way, and the foresight. And very often they are overlapping, and we do a lot in science, technology, foresight in Russia, because our institute is one of the largest teams in this field worldwide. Our institute has more than 200 full-time people, and we engage many more people. And we do a lot of different projects in foresight studies. So the journal is one of the one of the windows we can exchange our knowledge, and we can absorb knowledge from elsewhere. And so this is our journal, how it looks like. So if there will be any questions, I would like to give more information.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you,
Thank
Ozcan.
you.
I finished at this point.
Thank you, Alexander. That's great. So we have also like another kind of aspect, another culture of foresight from Russia in our panel today. So it will be also interesting to hear how Russian approach to foresight works. So I'll also briefly talk about the Foresight Journal. As the editor of Foresight, so I'll just show a couple of slides, not too many. First of all, we're proud to be attending the UNESCO Futures Literacy Forum, and grateful to Riel and the whole team organizing such an interesting event, bringing, I guess, around 7,000 or maybe nearly 10,000 people through this event. So it's a great possibility for increasing futures literacy in the world, generating, increasing, enhancing that. And as journals, of course, play an important role in this. There, some microphones should be muted, I think. So
Yes.
So Foresight Journal is a bi-monthly international journal championing futures studies and literacy globally. Foresight Journal has been there since 1999, as just over 2 decades. I have been doing the editorship of the journal since 2009. So the second decade of the journal has been pretty much with me under my editorship. So Foresight is a platform for everyone, and not necessarily only for academics and researchers, but also a wide variety of practitioners from policy making, from industry, research institutions, as well as academia and other actors and stakeholders in the field. So we try to focus on the full process of foresight, starting from understanding trends and drivers shaping our world, exploring alternative futures, setting priorities, and formulating strategies for action. So we would like to maintain this systemic and holistic approach to foresight, because it's not only about talking about the future or generating alternative futures or formulating visions and priorities, but also connecting them with the actions of today. So in this way, Journal creates a much needed forum and a platform for sound thinking about the future and socio-technological innovations, which go in hand in many ways, and focus on factors shaping the future, policy and strategy, and our new instruments, whether this could be quantitative, qualitative, or combinations of them, as well as illustrative case studies with novel approaches. Uh, as I said, I'm the editor of the journal. We have a set of regional editors, and we are growing globally with our regional editors. So we would like to outreach to different parts of the world through some of our colleagues and friends, professional, and who are also engaged in the different research and practice in terms of future, looking at their geography, their areas, and reflecting back to the rest of the world. So we have appointed a new North American regional editor, Dr. Jonathan Keloff. Jonathan has just done a fantastic job. We launched a special issue on North American Foresight last night, and that was a great event with the participation of the authors. So I will share the link to the video of the session. I'm sure you will appreciate that. And we have also regional editors from Latin America and Caribbean, Jose Cordera. We have Russian regional editors, Professor Leonid Gökberg and Alexander Sokolov. Just appointed last month a Chinese regional editor, Ying Huang. This is an entirely new world, and there's a lot going on in the region. So we would like to also explore and would like to share our knowledge and experience with this part of the world. We have Gece Karolistabina from Africa and Namdi Medici from the Middle East. So this will extend and grow. So each of these regional editors contribute a lot with different perspectives and cultures of futures thinking and policy making from their respective regions. As I said, we had a very successful launch of the North American Foresight yesterday. And after this successful event, actually, we are now thinking whether we should launch each of our issues with such events with the participation of the authors so that they will have an opportunity to express themselves and the work they've done from firsthand. Probably this could be one of the innovations that we can introduce into the field. So having introduced the journal very briefly, now I would like to come back to the panel and then ask the question. Yes,
Ozcan, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say some few words about the journal itself. I have no. Can I show it? It's. I didn't mention that it is a bi-monthly journal. Therefore, there are 6 issues per year. It is published on paper, in print, as well as on online, in French, but with abstracts in English. And we are producing best of this journal in Portuguese in cooperation with some Brazilian colleague, and also in Spanish. And more occasionally, we are producing working papers in Arabic or English, of course. So this is just what I wanted to add, with, since I didn't present it at the beginning.
That's great, Hugh. That's great to know. To make sure that futures thinking, futures literacy penetrates into our societies by using their native languages. So now I'd like to go to panel and then understand actually the editor's perspective, the changing landscape of future studies and foresight, and how their journals respond to this challenge. Each of us, I see that they've done editorship at least 1 decade. And we have Hugh here. He has done the editorship for about 4 decades. So probably he had a much greater opportunity to observe how the field has been evolving and then how they are responding to this change. But I'd like to actually ask everybody's experience on that, because you are all involved in foresight and future studies, not necessarily as editors, but also as researchers, thinkers, idea developers, or practitioners. So maybe I'll just start with Hugh, and then we'll go after that to Ted and the other editors.
Thank you. Did the field have moved over the last 40 or 50 years? I would say that there are basic ideas which are still there, that the future is not already predetermined, that it's open to a possible futures, and that therefore it's important for us to try to explore the range of these possible futures, including by starting with a representation more or less adequate of the present situation and of the bigger trends and emerging trends, and also with a increasing attention to the actors. Who are the actors? What are their values? What are their visions of alternative futures? And how do they interact one with another? The second basic idea I mentioned earlier is that the future is a field for freedom and power and will. And that therefore we have some responsibility today to shape that future. We are not, and this is an important point. Now, the field has changed over the years. I would say it's more international. It is, should I say that the methodology of future studies have changed. Are they better today than they were previously? I would say certainly yes. There is more participatory process in elaborating vision of alternative futures. I must confess that I am quite puzzled by some approach with a lot of heavy methodology, very sophisticated methodology. And my feeling about this is that whatever methodology you use, modeling, scenario building, or whatsoever, all this depends very much on the data and on the ideas you put in the system. We are still weak in data analysis, weak in producing new visions, new ideas. Even if, for example, the design is entering now in the field with an added value, which is clear to me. So there is, on the methodology side, I would say that there has been some developments, but the tools cannot replace thinking, imagining, exchanging ideas. The tools are only tools as to try to introduce some rigor in a field where we could say to everything and its opposite. Now, regarding the subject, I would say that there is an increasing attention paid to worldwide issues. Climate change, for example, it's obvious, and also increasing attention paid to local foresight and long. And I would say that at least in Europe, while governments were very paying much attention to the long term. They pay today less attention to the medium and long term issues, while local authorities, ONG, are more involved in this exercise.
Thanks, Hugh. And Ted, how do you observe changes in the futures field, and where we are right now, where we are heading to, and how we are planning to respond to this change?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think there's been a significant growth in the interest, in global interest in futures, and how we mainly, I think, because of the clear, or rather unclear uncertainties that we seem to face. And you know, if there's one thing that's changed the way we think about the future, it's the work in complexity theory. You know, the world is a complex race. We understand it to be complex. We don't understand exactly what that means. We don't understand the consequences, but we know we can't use linear thinking. And so much of the work seems to have grown from that, and the interest and keen interest. So this is growth in community. And so you have to start thinking about anticipation rather than scenarios, for example, as a way of trying to expand our capability to do that. We see growth in professional practice and the use of various futures methods and methodologies. We also see a growth in academic endeavor, you know, a much larger number of PhDs coming from doctoral studies in the field of futures or related fields. So there's growth both in scale and I would say in depth as well, which accounts for the generation of more journals and more interest and larger conferences and so on. Also in the field of journal publishing, open access is still a moving feast. You know, it seems clear to me that there's still a long way to go to make our work a public good, free and available, and how we get over that, but we are moving in that direction. And of course, what's really being a world changer now and in the future is the power of automation, of artificial intelligence, and just where that's taking us all. Politically, you know, one can go on about all the trends and things that are changing and how we have to deal with it. But it's kind of, can futures actually really seriously help humanity and society to grapple with and deal with and avoid existential loss and existential threats? And can we really help society to make it better for everyone? You know, that's the key question. And I suppose that's the challenge that we really face.
Thanks, Ted.
May I ask Ted a
yeah.
question? I think he is right by outlining a growing interest into the future. My question is, who are going to produce ideas regarding the future? Will that become more and more the field or the monopoly of a group of professionals? Or is that, I think personally that there is a challenge that the future, and this is why I like future literacy. I think the challenge is that everybody think about the future and act about the future. It's not the field only of professional futurists. I don't know what it is that you're a professional.
Well, I'll come back and I'll lean on the event that we're actually part of at the moment. You know, futures literacy is when one listens and talks to the people engaged in the practices of futures and in trying to promulgate futures literacy. It is about freedom. It is about democratizing the future. It is about opening the future up. It is about being critical and understanding the colonization of the future and all of those things. So exactly who, I don't know, but that's what people working in this field are striving towards, I would say, Hugh.
Mm-hmm. I guess this became much clearer with this ongoing pandemic. What I see when I look at actually the people and the societies, policymakers and countries, I realized that if we spend like giving hours and weeks of lectures to people to explain what is chaos, what is complexity, what is systems thinking, we couldn't be as successful as what the virus did. So the virus has shown us we are living in a very chaotic, very uncertain world. And everybody felt that. Every single person on the planet actually has felt that. And this is not a simple health issue. So we saw that this is a big systemic issue. And it is related to society, it's related to economy, it is related to technology. So everybody, I think, has also experienced and appreciated that. And also there's the futures, the uncertain futures. So that needs to be planned. But probably the definition of the time horizon in terms of futures has changed, because now the long term probably doesn't make sense too much to people, because they don't already know what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, or next year. So probably foresight and futures studies in general, in that sense, should also cover this near-term uncertainty too, where we can already develop some scenarios and approaches for. The virus claimed a lot of lives, but it also probably helped people to understand why futures matter. So I'd like to now go to Fabrice. If he has any opinions on this.
Yes, and I would like to say some words about the question on the changing landscape. One important transformation for the last 15 years it's that the number of papers in the futures field increased a lot on the online platforms such as Science Direct for Futures, Emerald for Foresight, Cairn for Prospective and Stratégie, enables the diffusion of papers all over the world, and it's very easy. The diffusion is very easy. If I have a look on the downloads of the institutions where the papers of Prospective and Stratégie were downloaded, I'm finding the European Parliament, King's College in London, the University of Galatasaray in Turkey, the University of California. That means that papers are very easily disseminated all over the world, and the communities, it enables exchanges with different perspectives. There are emerging journals also, such as, for example, Futures or Foresight Science, many initiatives such as the Riel's network of UNESCO chairs, anticipations meeting too, with meetings in 2015 in Toronto, in 2017 in London, and 2019 in Oslo, and the next one is planned to be in Arizona in the USA. So it's there is a very fantastic diversity of initiatives in the field. How do we cope with it? The journal has for 10 years published issues in relations in French future-oriented meetings we organized, or research programs on specific issues for the futures fields, on issues such as sovereignty, innovation, new territories, a meeting also about the end of globalization with a question mark about it, about the future of intelligence. And what is important for us, it's to maintain a dialogue, a conversation. An issue should not be a a collection of separate papers. What is important for us is to organize conversations. Actually, our journal is a way to organize conversations between authors on the specific issues for the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Fabrice. Alexander, what would you like to say?
Yeah, it's very interesting discussion. I very much appreciate what has been said already. I also noticed a lot of different issues which are emerging now, and so we've been publishing our journal for 13 years now, but I'm engaged more than for 25 years in future studies. So actually, what I noticed, it's a great diversity now, more and more in methodologies used. So many people already mentioned a lot of new methods which are more intensively used. But I would like to tell about the analysis of big data first of all, and artificial intelligence. It's very important. What's important? What I noticed in my practices, not only from the journal but from the projects we have. Actually, now the information is so broad. We have so much data, and the experts are more and more narrow field experts. So artificial intelligence, in this respect, gives us an opportunity to know more, to have a much better background for experts to use. But of course, artificial intelligence, in my view, will, at least in next 20 years or so, will not replace experts, because otherwise it will be very strange and very maybe unpractical, I would say. And this is a very important point. So we need first to help experts to have more evidence-based information on the one hand. On the other hand, we need experts to make. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yeah. So this is one point. Another point, we have, for example, for science and technology and innovation area, which we are specialized to a very large extent. What we see differently, if 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we and the experts were focused more on thematic areas. Which fields of science are most important? Which field of science we should invest? Government should invest to, first of all. Which technology will work better? But so it was kind of technology push approach more. Now it's more market pull approach. So we look at grand challenges. We look at global trends. We understand better how these global trends work in the national scope, or for which of them are most relevant for local communities. And this is also an important issue now. And we more and more use this approach, CPV, science, technology, environment, economy, policies. And V is very important, values. So we should look more, and the last epidemics shows how values are changed now and how important values are. This is also a very important issue which we should take into account. Mm-hmm. And people started last year. People started more thinking about the future. I fully agree with Ozcan what you said about how recent events influenced on this area. But what's important actually, there are two issues. Hughes said that people think more locally. On the one hand, it's true, but on the other hand, people started thinking more globally as well. So these are two areas which should be balanced maybe a little bit. What else? We should think more about wildcards, because the recent changes, global changes, which are which were expected to some extent, but we might consider them as wildcards. Maybe we should look more at and analyze wildcards. This is one point. Another point, we should maybe pay more attention to weak signals, because we had publications, and even now Science Technology Foresight we did for Russia a few years ago. We mentioned there that risk of pandemic was one of the key wildcards there, but nobody put any attention to this. This is an important issue. And what also important is, I guess, the Foresight as a whole, and the Ozcan run a special workshop within this UNESCO summit about this. Foresight is changing itself, so it becomes more complex, more complicated. It involves new players, new groups of interests, and so on. So we should think about it, and it's maybe a new area, new big development, which should be taken into account by journals as well. And one more, maybe my last point is, which is very important. Much more attention is paid now to how the results of Foresight should be used, and how to use the results which are achieved with the future studies into policy making, into practical policy making, and at all levels, at the governments, at the local authorities, in businesses and large companies, and not only large companies. This is one of the key issues, I guess, for the future of future studies. Thank you, Ozcan.
Okay, thanks, Alexander, for the comprehensive overview. I took some notes while you were speaking. And one of them was actually related to policy making and the wildcards. Some of the events that we have been experiencing recently, the latest one is, of course, the ongoing pandemic, has again shown us that it is not the problem of anticipation. It is, I mean, we have been talking about this virus, for example, in our reports from 10 years or 20 years ago. So we always use that this was a wild card. What if a virus, a global pandemic starts? So in many ways, this wasn't an unknown. So it was a known unknown. We knew that it would happen. We just didn't know when it would happen. And in that sense, what becomes important is not only the anticipate the likelihood of a pandemic, but also to develop some courses of action. And here we come to the notion of ignorance. This is the biggest, probably, enemy of foresight and futures thinking. It doesn't matter how well you do your foresight activities and how well you foresee the events, identify wildcards, shocks, and etc. If no one is taking any action on them, then that becomes idle. So it needs to be communicated to policy and strategy makers. So this is probably one of the important roles that the foresight journals, futures journals should play with. Yes, Hugh.
Ozcan, well, yes, I think you are perfectly right, especially when you say regarding the actual pandemic, that the problem is not a lack of foresight, because this has been described several times in reports since years and years. It's rather the very little attention paid to this foresight or these possible issues by decision makers and ourselves at Journal. So it seems to me that you raised two main questions. One is, when we speak about the future, when is the future? Don't mix phenomena which will be for the next year, with others phenomena which will be for the 50 years to come. This is one thing. The other thing is which value are we in general, and especially decision makers, which values they pay to the future in comparison with the satisfaction of immediate needs or urgency. My impression is that there has been no progress regarding the taking into account of the medium and long term in comparison with short-term issues.
Yeah, if you allow it, I fully agree with you, but I guess the government should be more not reactive, but proactive. And but the problem is that they are elected for a short period of time, 4 years and so. So they do not think, most of them, not all of them, but most of them don't think out of the box for longer term. And this is one of the problems actually.
Yes, but you cannot achieve something very important within a time frame of 2 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So this is the reason why I do think that uncertainty is a chance. It is an opportunity for us to change. But to change and to have sufficient energy to change the paradigm, we need a long-term vision of a desirable future.
Can I just briefly come in?
Sure,
just to answer your point that you put to me about anticipation is action. You misunderstand what an anticipatory system is if you say that. An anticipatory system involves action. There's a model of itself and its environment and changes itself when it detects a change in the environment. So one of the differences between futures and foresight and anticipatory systems, perhaps, is that an anticipatory systems is connected entirely to action orientation, not simply to a cognizance of a possible future. Okay.
Right.
Can I jump in on that? Sorry, just to ask Ted.
Yes.
Sorry, can I just ask Ted a little question about that? Like clarification. Go ahead. Yeah. It's that insofar as that's confined to the system, and if it's a system of perception, wouldn't that be the case about perception?
Wouldn't what be the case?
That the action is not an action which takes the form of an intervention in the, let's say,
you mean if you don't like what you see, you close your eyes?
Or if you see one thing in one way, and then for reasons related to anticipation, you see something in another way, you decide that you want to see it that way, that you have a choice about how you see things, and that anticipatory systems influence.
You may, if you realize that you do.
Yeah, in other words, if you change the system.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Your model of the world could change.
So perception can enter into the anticipatory framework.
Part of the interpretive process. Anyway, I should hand back to me.
Okay, and one more point. When Ted, you are here. Okay, when Alexander was talking about the artificial intelligence, I saw that you wanted to tell something about it and its role in human and technology, where they stand, where they will be in our lives, and what will be our role as humans in this world. And as an editor in the future, what are your questions and concerns about the artificial intelligence?
I may start if you wish. No?
Ted, yeah, did you hear me?
Okay.
We don't hear you. You are, unmute, please. Yes. Ted, do you hear me?
Yes, but I didn't hear the question. Sorry, Ozcan.
You didn't hear the question. Okay. Well, I will repeat that. Hugh, you want to add something on this?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just saying earlier that when Alexander mentioned artificial intelligence, I saw a kind of a comment actually that you might have. You just looked like you wanted to say something about it. The future of the artificial intelligence, human technology, and how they will interact with each other.
All right. Well, I'll just say one thing on that, because one could go on for ages. But simply, my existential question to myself is, how long will it be before I'm replaced with an AI bot as editor of Futures Journal? And if people are producing papers with AI, if AI bots are producing papers for an AI bot editor, then probably within a few years, we won't be able to understand what, as humans, what they are saying to each other and how they're ruling the world. So I'll pass at that point. We do like to be imaginative in this game, you know.
I don't.
Yes.
Subscribe.
I think there is no risk at all that Ed will be replaced by a robot within before 50 years. May I say a few words about that?
Sure. Yes, please go on.
My feeling is that regarding science and technology, and especially new technology device, including artificial intelligence, first of all, we should not forget that intelligence was conceived already 50 years ago. So there's one thing with technological push. Then there is a second question: at what speed this technology will spread in societies? And then there is a third question, which is even more important, is what will be the uses of this technology? We have now a number of new technologies which may lead to the best and to the worst future, to the best users as well to the worst future users. So it seems to me that the progress of technology is raising many questions, including philosophical, ethical, social questions, and we underestimate those questions with regard to the attention we pay to technological innovation.
Any other comments on this?
Ozcan, may I have a comment?
Oh, please. Yes, Fabrice.
I subscribe to the questions of Ted, and a journal is a community. A journal is a community of not only academic but of people who try to be in interaction with each other. And the question is, do we agree to introduce non-human works in the community, in the works of the community? It could be a question for the future. If we get a paper with a non-human co-author, what do we do with that this paper? What will we do? What will we do? As of the future is open, it could be an important issue for the future, for not only for our journals, but for all academic journals. Maybe that, you know, it's some companies or some labs will have the possibility to test it and to try to submit automatically a paper automatically written on the research conductive with non-humans, and it could be an issue for us for the future.
Okay. Yeah. Well, how do we know they're not already?
Yes, it's maybe.
I don't know what I get a name, but I don't know who's written it for sure. Well, the thing about AI is you need lots of test cases. You build the competence of an AI system through lots and lots of cases. So one paper won't be enough cases. We need lots of cases to be able to learn how to deal with them.
I think a more desirable future in this case will be a good convergence of human and technology. So
Sure.
not necessarily one replacing the other, because then the life would be meaningless altogether. We should probably strive for finding some ways how to bring together human and machine intelligence to increase our capacity and quality of lives, wealth and resilience for the future.
I look forward to that.
Yeah. So I'd like to throw one more question to the panel. And then after that, I wish to go to our audience with our questions in the remaining few minutes. Everybody is curious and they want to know what the editors of the Futures and Foresight journals are looking for. What sorts of papers are they expecting or they would give a priority to? Do you have such a kind of a preference that people should be focusing more on a certain point, on a certain topic or technique? So what do you expect from the authors? Ted, let's begin with you. Unmute, please, again. Yeah, we still don't hear you.
No, that's fine. I'm just going to, again, share this
screen.
Hopefully share the slide. Okay, here we go. Voilà. So I'll take a negative way of answering that. Why is it that reviewers or editors reject papers? What we're looking for are contributions to knowledge, well grounded in the literature, well grounded in evidence, have something to say, something to add to other academic work and professional practice work about how we understand and use and make sense of and protect and change and shape the future. So the main reasons for rejection is out of scope, it doesn't have any futures in it typically, or it's been published somewhere else. Although these days preprints are absolutely fine, they don't get counted as having been published elsewhere. And then they're rejected by reviewers. They don't make an adequate contribution to knowledge. They don't have adequate reasoning or logic or argument. There's an inadequate link to scholarly work and previous research, and they just can't understand them. Too complicated, or the language isn't good, or something like that. So those are the main reasons for rejection. At the same time, from a journal editor point of view, I'm looking for things that are breaking new ground, introducing new ideas. We have different kinds of papers, some called anticipations for ideas, which is really seeds, but have got something important to say about them. So we can encourage the growth and development of the field, but only publish the most rigorous work. That's really where the journal's at there. Okay.
Thanks, Ted. And Hugh, what sorts of papers would you like to see in your journal in the years to come?
Well, I mostly agree with what Ed just told us, despite I'm puzzled by the term of knowledge, because there is knowledge about the future. So I would rather say some papers which are based on data, on arguments, on visions, and which are sufficiently grounded on profound thinking, and are also easy to read for people who are not aware. if I look at our authors, we have a network of an international network of authors coming from various backgrounds: physics, biology, economy, etc., etc. Now they all need to be able to speak, to make a contribution to our journal with a deep knowledge of their field, but also with a holistic approach, if I may say so, and paying always attention to the impact on society. Regarding the issues, I would say we are very open regarding the subject and issues. But what gives the paper its scientific dimension to me is that well, it's a discussion paper. I would rather be more comfortable with the idea of a discussion paper which is solidly elaborated than with a paper based on knowledge. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Fabrice, what would you like to see in your journal?
Yes, well, thank you. We publish three types of papers. We publish research articles, classic research articles, essays on actors' viewpoints. So we have a diversity of papers. We also have short essays on decision issues. It's a section called Decidere in Latin, and on book reviews. And as I previously mentioned it, we want to organize conversations from different perspectives, so that we look for diversity and also for innovation, for novel ideas. We are open to long papers. In the last issue, the one of the future of intelligence, we published a 30 pages paper on cyber intelligence, and which is now one of the most downloaded papers of the journal. Paper are peer reviewed. We have an editorial board and the scientific board, and but to us the objective is to get paper who offers a diversity on new ideas.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Fabrice. Alexander, do you have a very short and clear answer to this?
Okay. I just will be very brief. I fully agree with Ted that there are some requirements which should be met for the papers, and it will not they will not disappear. So we need to have high quality papers first. Second, probably we are addressing very broad areas, although mostly focused on science, technology, innovation around it. But anyway, we are very much interested in papers related to futures of occupations, for example, how occupation will look, which skills will be needed from people, workers from in the future. Future of societies is very interesting. How society will be changed. Of future of human beings, human development is very important. What's also very important, that the papers should be evidence-based as much as possible. That's one point. Another point is that probably we also are very much looking for papers which are posing new questions and stimulating discussions related to the future in different kinds, both methodology, organization foresight studies, and maybe foresight for particular areas. And we practice from already for a few years special issues devoted to individual problems. So we are also open for a wide range of papers.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Alexander. And Riel, You have done a fantastic job by bringing thousands of people together at this UNESCO Futures Literacy Summit. I mean, we really congratulate you and admire the work you have done. So I'd like to learn, what is your expectation from the journals in terms of futures literacy? What sorts of roles they should play for the dissemination of knowledge?
Thank you, Ozcan, and thank you all very much. The reason that this is successful is obviously because of you and because of the community that makes this possible. There's been an absolutely incredible bottom-up expression of interest and enthusiasm. And I think listening to the conversation, which is wonderful, and thank you for organizing this, Ozcan, you've played a very crucial role in the organization of the journals, the presence of journals at the summit. And I was very keen to ensure that the journals were part of the summit because obviously there's a crucial role for research and for dissemination. And I see that on across a very large spectrum that's already been evoked by the discussion here, meaning something that ranges from introductory and very accessible material to the deeper and more, let's say, frontier aspects of human thinking around alternative epistemologies, around different ways of conceiving the field. And that research seems to me to be essential. I have a hope, which many of you have heard me talk about, which is that future studies is making a turn away from being a kind of a response to an itch, the desire to plan, which of course is very powerful and important, to something that is much more broad-based and studies the entire range of anticipatory systems and processes that characterize human, but also perhaps non-human phenomena. And that anticipatory systems foundation for future studies would really provide, I think, a very, very broad basis for the kinds of research and journals, but also for a non-cyclical and non-personal, personality-based presence of future studies in the academy, which clearly academic journals are part of that ecosystem. So that's really kind of that's my scenario, and it's very speculative in many ways. But of course, to make that speculative scenario tangible or concrete, the journals would play an absolutely fundamental role.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We are very glad to hear that, I guess, as the editors of the journals in the field. I know that everybody is very busy and they have a lot of things to do during the rest of the day. I'd like to take next 5-6 minutes to get questions from our audience. Thanks for being with us during this session. We have a lot more to talk, but if you have any kind of burning questions, please turn your video on and ask your question. I know that Lena Maya is sitting there, and she wanted to talk about the Finnish language Foresight Journal. So,
You see this? Yes.
Yeah.
Critics from Finland. So we have had within the Society for Future Studies, which is founded here in Turku, 1980 by Malaska and other professors here, a new journal called Futura, and you cannot really see it, but you can find it online. It's been published quarterly ever since 1983. It accepts articles, peer-reviewed articles in Finnish language, Swedish language, and in English. And unfortunately, we lost a long time editor-in-chief just in September. So the paper is looking for a new one, and the work is stressed, but the last number of this year will come out within this month. And I just want to add to the diversity of these journals that, to my understanding, the Spanish language is a huge and large, and Finnish is a small one, but the Interactive Society has been doing pioneering work here, published even scientific lecture books, and all these articles can be reviewed. All of them have a short the online version, so you can read the abstracts. And please get in touch with the Secretary General. She speaks English, so you can write to her on the society. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena-Maja. It's great to see that. We have a question by Joe Ravitz. Joe's also here, and he's asking a very good question that I also want to discuss during the panel. He's asking, if the paper model evolve in different ways in journals? Because we see that actually we are still very conventional in terms of having this, papers, manuscripts published in papers and in certain format. Probably this format hasn't changed for many decades now. So do we expect any changes that we present this knowledge by using some newer technologies, ideas, concepts?
Hi, Ozcan, and everybody. So sorry I was late in arriving. It's a busy weekend. But great discussion. Thank you so much. And thank you, Riel, for putting all this together or hosting everything and so on. Much appreciated. And can we do this every year? Is that a good idea? Why not? So my point really, well, I mentioned first the Foresight 3.0 so-called workshop, which I think was very successful on Thursday, despite a power cut right in the middle and so on. And that then one of the implications of that is to say, okay, as Ozcan says, the model of scientific publishing has been established, for 100 years or more, maybe, and it's growing, it's evolving, but other things are happening all around it. And not to get into the detail of, the editorial review process and things, very important issues like this, but rather to look more broadly and say, okay, the future is being debated on countless numbers of social media channels and platforms and blogs and similar digitally enabled things. Are we any the wiser, or are we all dividing into communities and camps of different views and worldviews and so on? Can academic publishing, as we have known it, respond to this? For me, this is a wide open question, but I'll just say at this moment, well, just in the last 6 months, due to the pandemic, we've started to use interactive whiteboards as a main point of reference. And what I'm now trying to do with a few other people is say, oh, maybe this is actually an opportunity to push forward the state of the art and say, okay, if you have a room full of 25 people or 50 people, what if everybody has some ideas and they look actively to connect them up? Now, we've all done futures workshops and so on for a long time, and usually they're quite, random and ramshackle in my honest view as a practitioner. Maybe we can get more organized and more systematic and use that as a way of generating papers which are not only one expert or, a small group of, people who have got some evidence and they apply a methodology with a literature review in this kind of tried and trusted model, but other ways of generating collective intelligence or insight and so on and so on. So, well, the question is wide open.
I can answer to that from the Foresight Journal's point of view. We are actually very open to these new technologies and new possibilities of communicating your ideas. So we have recently taken a small step, but I think it's an important one. Now the authors can attach short presentations of their papers, either in PowerPoint slides format or in video format or in any other visual technologies. So now these presentations will be attached to their papers and they will exist together. So We have a couple of examples already on the system, and the authors are just shooting some short videos, and then this is really creating a great impact. And then you really want to read the rest of the story from the paper. I find it really a great step. And also, like, there's the issue launches with presence of the authors. So this is the new idea which came out recently. So we will probably apply that idea in the next issues we are launching. So we would like to have the authors come in and then presenting their ideas to the audience.
We are, Oscar, if I may just say, if you would, we are moving exactly in that same direction within Futuribles. So we are producing papers in the journal, but at the same time we are producing on eTunes a series of speeches based on these papers.
I can also add a little bit. We run every year two big events, two big conferences. Many authors from our journals are attending those conferences, make presentation there and so on. And so often we ask for interviews, and some of them are placed to our website. So this is also an interesting idea, and so we are in favor of it, definitely. Thank you.
I'm not sure Riel replied to your question, Ozcan, regarding his expectation from the Futures journals.
Yes. Can I come in?
Sure.
I mean, this is clearly a moving feast. You've got a shift in the way knowledge is created and shared, for sure, enabled by technology. You have this kind of precious issue of the peer review process. You have a growth in preprints and getting work out there as quickly as possible and in the public domain. I think that personally, I think it's really great to have the debate that goes on in peer review in the public domain to a degree. So it's the kind of thing that Joe's talking about. Put it out there, share your critiques, be confident enough and be supported enough to do that, because there are hostages to fortunes in making that process public for some predatory journalists, for example. Just in terms of the presentation in multimedia, I think Futures Journal now allows you to have linked videos, bearing in mind that 99+ % of people read the papers online. They don't have them in books anymore or journals. Linkages within the papers to videos and other things is, I think, if we're also trying to create the future, as futurists, then to try out and experiment with different techniques. I mean, Futures Journal is pretty staid. It's Elsevier, the publishers. It's like moving a mountain. But they are moving as well. They're challenged by open access and how to deal with that. They want to embrace new technologies. They want to stay in advance. So they are investing in this kind of stuff. But I think the issue of the democratization of knowledge is really at the core of Joe's question, and I think that's something we have to support and be very mindful of and do the best we can. For me, a great breakthrough is that apart from OA, is that preprints are now not taken as being already published papers. We'll publish a paper that's already been published and reviewed in preprint, and some referees will go, "Oh, I've seen that before," and you say, "Well, okay, well, you're seeing it again then."
Yeah. Yes. Many thanks. So probably it's a good time to conclude the session here. I wish to thank again all the editors for joining this session. I wish our audience to stay with us in the past an hour and a half. And I also wish to thank to Riel and the UNESCO team for organizing such a wonderful summit. We are certainly looking forward to the next one. And thanks everyone. So I wish you a good day. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
Thank you, Ozcan. Bye-bye.